Hello. Well, hello. Welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian who are pure of heart seek to find the light and banish the darkness of the 80s movies we think we love or might have missed with our new, shiny, grown up eyes. Today, we're talking about a legend, a movie selection from 1986.
Through the ages, the powers of good and evil have been at work amongst us. Through the passages of time, many have attempted to probe and distinguish between myth and fact. What is innocence? What is purity? What is corruption?
Look, ugly one-horned mule.
What is evil? We still search for the answer. The confrontation between the forces has captured the imaginations of civilization's greatest philosophers, poets, and writers.
Judge her with your heart, not your eyes.
Now, through the cameras of one of the most innovative filmmakers of our generation, comes a motion picture to fire the spirit, to excite the senses, to captivate the eye. I am darkness. Ridley Scott's Legend.
Ah, ha, 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 ha. Really sums it up, I think. Uh, is this a movie that you have seen, have watched, have feelings about?
So I have never seen this movie before. I had
Excellent. Excellent.
So I'm coming in completely with fresh eyes. Yeah, for whatever reason I avoided it, probably because I tend to I enjoy fantasy, but I tend towards fantasy that has like world building and like a history rather than, let's say, fairy tale fantasy.
Okay.
Where the entire world is created for this one story.
Right.
And then there's some that kind of run that line, like Never Ending Story or Dark
Labyrinth.
Crystal, Labyrinth, where everything that appears in the universe exists only in this small bubble. Like, you can't imagine that there's a town nearby,
Right.
And so I tend to, I feel like this whole wave of all this kind of started again from like the influence, and this stuff existed beforehand, but it's just like, now what do we got on the shelves? Let's put that up. Like when Star Wars came out, that you either had the sci-fi movies or the fantasy movies, because there was so much fantasy in Star Wars, and it became the big new thing. And so, yeah, I think it was like the unicorns, and then the demon devil that Tim Curry plays, that kind of like, maybe I might not be into this. And
Okay.
and I think when I saw the credits, when I saw it's like, character names like Pox and Blunder and Billy Barty plays Screwball, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I hear you. And I agree. I think that you've already hit the nail on the head of a lot of what's wrong with this movie and why it doesn't work. Um, I have seen this movie and I've seen it lots of times, but I can never remember it. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
stay in my brain. And so I always am thinking like, no, I've seen Legend. I've seen Legend a bunch of times. Why can't I remember it? And why don't I have any like feelings about it one way or the other? Because it's all so insubstantial that it
Ye-
just floats away.
this movie in some ways could have had like a rock opera soundtrack. Like this is the kind of
Oh.
movie, and I don't and maybe that would have been better, maybe it wouldn't have been better. I don't know, but this is like a good this is the kind of movie that is to where
Mhm.
it is kind of a trip, a transcendental, marijuana appreciated kind of like late night movie.
Yeah.
And then having said that, it's like that's kind of like the adults who are making it and their grasp of fantasy,
Mhm.
and yet I feel like this movie is really the audience for this movie is really like coming of age young women who are
Mhm.
starting to have strange feelings, who are, because they're in this movie, there's so much that is about also like
Love.
love, but also like sensuality,
Yeah.
like Tim Curry, who's great in this. He is kind of turned on all the time,
Oh yeah.
you know, like he is, and it's not just about love for our main actress, for Mia Sarah, who's great in this.
She is. She's great. She's
Yes.
gorgeous. She looks the part. She acts the part perfectly. She's putting in her work here. So it's not her and it's not Tim Curry.
Yeah. It's I think it's just the nature of the movie itself,
It's the plot. The
Yeah.
plot of this movie is always getting distracted. It's like, we're going to do this, and we get distracted by that.
Mhm.
Everything is too easy. So they have to like keep getting side quested by it. Like, if this was an improv scene, I would say stop adding plot. So this movie starts with a lot of crawl, a lot of words, a lot of reading. Even though this book like should be based on even though this movie should be based on a book and isn't, which is I think what we're saying is that it's not, it needs to be based in a world and it's not. Nothing makes any sense. We have to read a whole paragraph about how in a time before time the Lord of Darkness banished the light. The light is the sounds of unicorns, and unicorns can only be found by pure souls. And then they tell us about Jack. It's like, what? Why
Mhm.
do I have to read a novella?
Well, I see. I'm okay. So a couple of things. So I'm okay with a fairy tale. I'm okay with something that exists with a prophecy and a chosen one and an A to B, and the whole universe is done. Like I liked Never Ending Story. Um, but it's just that, and then also we've got to add into the conversation that this is not the cut that the director or the actors were happy with.
Right.
This there was like there's an American cut, there's a European cut, and then there's a director's cut. You
And the
know,
director's cut is like 3 hours long.
yeah, and so screw that noise. so,
Yeah. No.
um, yeah, and so it's hard to say like how much, because it really, what is missing from this for me is really an interest in one thing. Like it's just so we're kind of jumping to clouds, and
Mhm.
it's these moment to moments are not substantial enough. Like we're way more concerned about goopy people in ugly makeup
Yeah.
than we are about what Tom Cruise's character wants, what is difficult for him for his growth, you know.
And why does he live in the forest? And why doesn't he have any pants? And how
Mhm.
did he meet Mia Sarah? And like I was really
Like I don't
interested in
mind I
them.
don't mind that lack of backstory. Like I'm
I
okay with
do.
that.
I want to know.
Like I'm okay with that we are in the moment with them, and then we're just kind of thrust in the middle of things and we don't have much explained. But once we're with them, at that point, I want to be into what they are into. Yeah, like I want, if this is a quest for something magical, I want to feel the quest. I want to feel like we're part of the quest. I want to care about it. Like I cared when the unicorn got her horn chopped off.
Oh, I cared about that very much. And I really loved the whole like scenic painting. I liked the beginning where we're in the forest and there's just all these creatures
Mhm.
around and she's dancing
So
around.
much work into like just watching this is like so much work and care went into every single shot. This is really Ridley Scott's like music video roots,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
showing. Yeah, like watching every shot, it hurt me as with how much effort went into it, and I can't imagine this movie was received well. And
No.
this was
Was
coming
not.
off of I think Blade Runner, which had also been panned and been a grueling, horrible experience, you know.
And yet the result of that is amazing. And the result
Uh-huh.
of this is
Yes, absolutely.
confusing.
Yes.
Which by the way, we have to do Blade Runner. Like that should have been our movie
Oh,
that was paired with
absolutely.
this.
Yes. Um,
Although as we know, it is hard to talk about movies that you love, and in this one, I'm already like, but we skipped this and we skipped that.
and I get that this is a movie that some people love.
But is it though? You don't hear a lot of people
I think
clamoring
they love, in my opinion, I think they love
Tim
moments.
Curry. I
Yeah,
think people
Tim
love Tim
Curry.
Curry
Yeah. And when it comes to like I'm a fan of what Tom Cruise does.
as am I.
He is so charming, and none of that charm comes through in this movie.
Because he has nothing to do.
Yeah,
There's no and what I mean when I say this movie gets distracted is that like first he's like, I love you, let's hang out in the meadow and let's just like, it's smooch city all day long. And then she's like, this ring is my wedding ring, I'm gonna throw it in the lake, and he jumps in the lake. But then there's also unicorns, and so there's just too many things happening and you never get the sense of like, again, why does he live in the motherfucking forest and why doesn't he have
like I don't
pants?
mind that.
I want to know, is he abandoned? Was he
Yeah.
abandoned by his parents? That we see a woman who lives in the village and she's like, "Oh, you need to be a proper lady, Mia Sarah."
This
But
is it's
why?
almost kind of an Adam and Eve story, like nature and then only one woman and one man exist, And
And
then there's the old lady.
yeah, who's like making bread and hanging laundry.
Like are there any other humans?
No. No, there aren't. But I
So
would like it if she had like parents that if like it would make more sense to me if her parents were like, you have to marry a prince, you can't marry this weirdo in the woods without
so what
pants.
you feel was missing was more backstory.
No, not more backstory, more story. Like it's like
Yeah,
if it turns out that he was truly a prince and he found this armor and the armor had come from the kingdom that was lost, when the darkness took over his family's kingdom and he was recovering his birthright. I mean, is that backstory or is that a plot?
right. Well, I think we can. This is one of those movies to where we can intellectually criticize.
Mhm.
But I feel like the people who love this movie
Don't care.
don't care. It is an emotional experience. Sort of like there's two camps. There's the people who love tasseled hair and bubbles and synthesized flute and unicorns and
Mhm.
children with dubbed voices.
And I'll tell you, they probably don't listen to podcasts, Nathan.
I don't know. I don't know. And then
I know, you're right. I shouldn't assume.
yeah,
If you're here, we love you and this is a safe space.
we see you.
and we
Understand we are coming from a different point of view.
but normally I love that stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah, the thing is that it's a spectrum, really, because there's stuff that you could lump in that maybe someone who is much more harsh with their opinion would lump in things like Willow or even Conan, and that they're not into this kind of stuff. But I see the dividing line
Mhm.
personally between
Mhm.
just kind of like how the fantasy worlds themselves are created.
Yes. Well, and again, this not only is lacking, like, if you want to call it a plot or backstory or whatever, it's also lacking like anything grounded in something that I can hold in my brain. Because Una, the little fairy who is like a tiny little pinprick of light. So at some point, here's what happens in the movie. Jack Jack takes Mia Sarah to see the unicorns, and she thinks that she has somehow doomed them all by trying to touch one, but a goblin shot it in the ass with a dart, and stole its horn. So the goblins have a unicorn horn, and the world is plunged into ice, into permanent winter because pure innocence has been taken. This is
Yeah,
what the
this is
darkness
this is the
wants.
struggle of light and dark, and
Yeah.
so
And the
with the
darkness,
unicorn, yeah, the
who
darkness
is
is
Tim
taking over.
Curry, wants to kill the other unicorns so that darkness can exist forever because there won't be any light left in the world.
Mhm.
Uh, Along this journey, Tom Cruise's character meets a whole bunch of what are they? What are they, Nathan? Are they fairies? Are they trolls?
Right.
What are they?
Uh, insert whatever. They're like little goblin. They're not
People.
goblins. Yeah,
Because the
they're
goblins are bad.
right. They're
These are like good
these are like
goblins.
dwarves.
Okay. Because they are like mostly either young people or little people in extensive character makeup.
Yeah, these are some of the best little people in show business in this, like Billy Barty, and then the Indian actor whose name escapes me, who's been in everything.
Everything. Um and they want to help with the quest, but they're also reluctant to help in the quest, and they are like both brave and cowardly, as we love to see in this type of movie. And the Gump is like a cherub.
Yeah, yeah, the Gump, played by the, I think, German, like the intense German actor who is in the Tin Drum. I was like,
And he's got a little friend who is a tiny ball of light. Now, here's what I mean by like help me out here movie. She appears to Tom Cruise and says, "Now we have a secret. I can be anyone you want." And it's like, "Well, wait.
yeah, yeah.
Are
She
you
says,
what?"
she says, even your hardest desire.
And but why is that a secret? No one else knew that she's a person? I don't I'm so lost.
And it's tough to say that if some of these things are a result of the re-editing of the movie, you know?
Yes, because the movie is also very Shakespearean. Like the best part I think is when the darkness is like his costuming is insane. So we only get to see tiny little bits and pieces of it here and there until the very end. But they're like having this Shakespearean like who this tender morsel be? How black is thine heart? Black is that blacker than pitch, blacker than the foulest witch. Like, okay,
Mhm.
that's the
Ooh.
best part.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that there are moments that are quite wonderful.
mhm.
Like you could make a like a fan trailer of these moments, and it's like, oh my god, this movie looks amazing. And but yet it's always the stringing along the it kind of gets, I feel like the fantasy movies like this that get lost in the forest.
Yeah.
They get lost, kind of obsessed around different scenes and showpieces, you
Yeah,
know?
like the one where they're crossing a bog, and this big huge witch pops out, which is like a really cool looking.
Yeah, and she is horny as hell too.
Oh, she wants
She is,
pantsless
yeah,
Tom Cruise.
yeah, she is a gilf, a
Yeah.
goblin.
A goblin who is down to clown. Um,
Uh-huh.
but her part is over so quickly.
But there's also so many of these little moments that just distract us from what do they want? How are they trying to get it? How are they doing it in a meaningful way? And then the ending of the movie,
Yes.
it
I need
kind
to talk about that part in a lot of detail. I need to talk about
so
everything that
is
happens once Mia Sarah is captured.
okay. Well, I'll come to the ending
Okay.
later,
And then we'll
but
come scoot back.
yeah, then we'll scoop back because we can't miss anything.
We've
But
missed so much.
oh, okay. So let's assume that many people have not seen this. Okay, let's keep them up. Let's take us down the trail again.
Okay. So so Mia Sarah and the remaining unicorn, so she sort of thinks that this is her fault, that she's plunged the world into eternal darkness, so she wants to go save the mayor. So she does go find the unicorn mayor, and of course the goblins immediately find her. So they have captured both Mia Sarah and the last remaining unicorn really easily. Just so easily. It seems like they could have done this anytime they wanted. And there we missed a little part where the goblins are going to do a little bit of like a, what would you call it? Like a mutiny against
Mm,
against the
the
darkness,
darkness.
because
Yeah,
the unicorn's horn works a little bit like a magic wand.
right.
So then all of a sudden, Tim Curry has captured Mia Sarah, has the female unicorn, and because they fell in a pit, has Tom Cruise, Forrest Gump, Una the little fairy, and all of their companions in a dungeon.
Hmm. Yeah, and they're trapped in a dungeon. They have to get out. It basically is the dungeon to the lair of the darkness.
Who has this like torture chamber that we see several times in the movie, are these big, it's almost like in Temple of Doom. Like
Hmm.
they're wearing like leather loincloths and they're like just hitting people in the tummy with sticks, and that's the torture.
Hmm.
You just see in the background a guy laying on like a dais, and it's like whack, hit him in the tummy with a reed, whack, hit him in the tummy with a reed. His like arms and legs bounce up into the air. And they seem very like stupid but angry. And
Hmm.
so that's the torture chamber that they're in. So I think we're all caught up.
Yeah. I feel like the perfect fantasy movie that is kind of in the same vein of this is The Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
And in that, it's like I'm all down for like a trippy, you know, early 80s, late 70s style fantasy movie that is meant for adults, like, that it
Yeah,
is meant to get high on. I'm all up for something abstract like that. But this just it seems lost, and I like The Wizard of Oz. Like, you have to feel like you're on a journey, you know what the journey is, and at all the twists and turns that you feel for the characters, you feel like the journey is slipping away. It's like the Joseph Campbell thing of what they want is just never quite. You never kind of feel like you're in the passenger seat next to them.
right. So there's a big escape that's happening where the big quest is happening, where like Gump and Jack and everybody are trying to escape. Una is like, I'll only let you out if you make out with me.
Hmm.
So we know what she wants.
Right.
But he's like, nope, won't do it. She lets him out anyway. And that's the part that I do remember, is always being like, what was the deal with that fairy chick who like just really wanted one smoocheroo from Tom Cruise? Like, that's the part I remember, and remember thinking I can't wrap my brain around what was going on in that moment. because she's like, you told my secret. What secret? You broke your promise. What promise? If he kisses her, will some magic be undone? I'm very confused by all of that. Um, and meanwhile, Mia Sarah is being wooed
Mm-hmm.
by Tim Curry, who we finally get to see in his full
Yeah, which is
madness.
fantastic, which is fantastic.
He's got hooves. He's like 8 feet tall. He's got abs for days. He's, of course, half horse, half giant man top, and he's got a huge facial prosthetic and horns that go straight up that are like 3 feet long. It's why this movie should be a legend, pun intended, based only on his character design.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an iconic character. And
And
I
he looks great in it.
yeah.
And
And I
he's really in there. He's not like it's not like some other weirdo in there and he's just doing a voiceover, which they could have done. It's
Mhm.
Tim Curry in there.
I still feel and then also I saw so many images and moments and clips of him.
Yeah.
So coming into this movie, that was one of the things I was expecting is to really watch him chew this scenery and it being top shelf Tim Curry. And I felt like I only got like a B minus in terms of not in terms of what he did, but just of moments of scenery chewing moments for
Yeah.
him.
He
It-
does a big speech where he's like, but it's very short and it only happens
yeah,
once.
I
Like,
wanted more. I wanted
agree.
more. Yeah.
I completely agree. Because even when he's wooing Mia Sarah, he woos her by not being there. He's like, here's a table with some nice glassware. Are you interested in kitchen accessories? Let me woo you with a
Mhm.
Macy's display table of things you can register for a wedding. Um, and then what gets her is the dance.
Mhm.
There's a big high collared a woman who looks like a chess piece. Like, would you say?
Yeah, admittedly at this point I was checking IMDb for trivia on the
Trivia and
movie.
facts, and I was
Mhm.
folding laundry like a maniac. But
Yeah.
so this like crazy costume chess piece dancer who has no face is like dancing and dancing and swirling and twirling, and finally Mia Sarah's like, "Look, I gotta dance, okay? I That's how you get me. I gotta swirl and twirl. I'm a dance fiend." So as soon as she dances, bada boop, she is evil Mia Sarah, who is in this like, okay, so the back of this dress is like a Dorito. It's got like a neck piece that's like a complete triangle sticking out. She's got her hair like plastered down to her face in these 1920s twirly whirly finger curls. Black eyeshadow, of course. Black lipstick, of course, because that's what you wear when you're a goth
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
queen. And then another triangle in the front that's like a piece of clear plastic that's holding her boobs in.
Mhm. Yes.
Why is no one cosplaying this up and down Comic-Con? It's like a great costume
Yeah.
and she looks amazing in it. And he's trying to convince her to become evil.
Mhm.
Come to the dark side. No, I won't. We've got all this cookies and the glassware and the dancing. No, I still don't want to. Are you sure? Well, you've convinced me. I'm going to kill the unicorn.
Mhm.
And then Tim Curry's like, oh, sweet. It worked. Excellent. She wants to kill the unicorn. Let's do this. Uh, they go to kill the unicorn. This is the only moment where you get this big speech where he's like, the light and the dark, and it can't exist. And um, we need a lot more dialogue from Tim Curry, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And we needed a lot more screen time with this character because, of course, at this moment, Jack is poised with the bow and arrow, hiding in the wings, which is like very Temple of Doom as well. And he's like, the Gump is like, "You've got to kill her. She's going to kill the unicorn."
Right. It's about faith and trust now at this point,
Yeah.
Like he had vowed to, marry her and to
Mhm.
trust her
Well, that
and
was before she had black lipstick on, though.
correct. And now the question is has she gone evil? Does he still trust her? Word use, follow his heart.
Mhm. And he knows. He says, "I trust you, Lily." And he doesn't shoot her. She, of course, frees the unicorn instead of murdering it, and Tim Curry is like, "Damn it. First pretty girl who waltzes my way and I get tricked." He's really been burned. And then a fight ensues.
Yeah, now it's time for the darkness because at this point the darkness is pretty immobile. Like he's basically been in the whole one room in the whole movie,
Mhm.
sitting down, standing, walking around, and now he's totally just hauling ass with a giant
Yeah.
sword, which is fun to watch.
A giant sword, and it is.
Because I mean, it's just so difficult. It must be so difficult to move in that makeup, in that costume.
And of course Tom Cruise is just stumbling backwards. And the big trick, he's been disarmed, he's about to be killed. He grabs the unicorn horn out of what I thought was lava. There's a little puddle.
Yes, yes.
It's an orange puddle. The unicorn horn is slowly
Well,
sinking
I
in.
think he thought it might have been lava too. In some ways, it might have been a test.
Was he going to
Was it?
stick his hand into the lava?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna give Ridley Scott credit and say that that we were meant to think that maybe it was lava, that it was basically a test, and it was not him knowing something about the world and how this fantasy universe works over us.
Okay. I definitely thought it was lava, and I thought, like,
Yeah, me
okay,
too.
he's got to stick his hand in and, like, possibly be burned to retrieve the unicorn skull. Not skull. What is
Right.
it? It's
The
not a
unicorn,
skull.
the horn, the
The
unicorn
horn.
horn.
Thank you.
Oh my god, they have the whole skull in here.
It's the horn.
Gross.
Um, it's really dead now. So he finds it, he takes it, he stabs the darkness in the heart with it, and that saves the day.
Yeah.
Day
And so
saved.
yeah. And so the question is, and then we cut to, so at the beginning of the movie, she threw her ring into the pond, into the lake or
And
whatever it
declared
was.
that she would marry the man or marry the person who retrieved it.
Right. And so he dives in after it. And now at the ending, having the darkness defeated, we now come to him swimming up out of that water with the
Mm-hmm.
ring.
Yeah.
So was this all then basically a holodeck test? Was the entire
Oh,
so
I
was
hope so.
so what? And this reminds me almost of like of Blade Runner in some
Mm,
degrees, of like some of these same ideas of the unicorn and who is a replicant and things like that. Like, so the question is in this theatrical cut, and I do think that we need to in our review put like legend parentheses theatrical cut,
okay.
because I'm wondering if some people love
The
the
director's
director's
cut.
cut because I think it's twice as long and it has a totally different soundtrack, you know.
Yeah, and I've never seen the director's cut, so maybe it is a
No.
whole different experience. So I'll
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Like honestly, like any version of Blade Runner is great.
That's true.
It's just degrees of great, you know.
And I like all the versions of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that
Yeah,
I
and that
wanted to see all the versions of Blade Runner. I wanted to see all the different ones.
uh
With this,
right.
I don't I wouldn't go if you were like, we're gonna show the 3 hour legend. I'd be like, cool, I have something to do at that day and
Yeah,
time.
it's kind of like there's like there's been like the director's cut of like, Batman versus Superman or the director's cut of
Which I
like
watched.
yeah, which I watched as well, which is
4 hours long.
much better, but
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily mean that I love that movie now, you know.
No. No, I do not. I
I
still
I,
do
f-
not.
I feel like if you are I feel like the people who love Legend love either version
Of
to a
course.
degree,
Of
you
course.
know.
So, here's the really tough question is, how do you rate this movie on a scale
Ugh.
of
Yeah.
1 unicorn skull to 10 unicorn skulls, the whole skull?
Uh-huh.
How do you rate
Yeah, it's so
Legend?
hard because I feel myself reserving total judgment because of that no one was happy with this cut, you know. There's like a
Yeah.
movie, you know, and I don't think it's as severe, but you know, there's some movies where it's like there's a movie that I love, like so Hayao Miyazaki, the Japanese animator, is
Who
one
I
of my
love.
favorite, yeah, one of my favorite filmmakers. Did Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, you
Princess
know,
Mononoke.
yeah. So his first movie first came to America, um, and it was completely re-edited and butchered. So this is Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, like
Mhm.
a great adventure story with like darkness and heartbreak and things like that. But it came to America as Warriors of the Wind, and they just re-edited everything and had the worst voiceover, and it was light years away from what the actual movie is. So there's part of me that wants to give Legend the benefit of the doubt. You know, like
Okay.
watching it, maybe my experience was a 3,
Okay.
but and I want to give it a 4.
Wow.
Just at,
I think
at,
that's your lowest ever except for Young Guns.
yeah, I think so. Like I have a hard time rating movies too low because I know how hard it is to make movies.
That's true. And this movie, it was not a lack of effort on
Yeah,
anyone's part.
exactly. Like they put in the work. Um and this is also me also like acknowledging that people do love this movie.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I'm going to end up at a 4.
Okay.
Um yeah, how about you?
I'm going to go slightly higher. I'm going to give it 5 unicorn skulls because I think
Hmm.
it's teetering on the edge. Like I'm imagining my unicorn skull is like balancing and teetering right on the edge of the very very middle, and it either wants to like slide into greatness or slide into obscurity, and it can't decide one way or the other, and any little thing could tip it one way or the other. The mood that you're in when you watch it could tip it one way or the other. um the the version, I think, of course, could tip it one way or the other. So I'm going to give it a solid 5 right in the middle and say I think it had all the ingredients. It just needed less time in the oven. It
Uh-huh.
was a little overbaked. um and so was that your deep cut recommendation, the Miyazaki movie?
um yeah, I would say either Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, or like like there's part of me that wants to like if you had a bad time, like a palate cleanser like Conan, you know, like something that like tacks in the other direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll go with Nausicaa,
I
which
think that's
is
great. And it's like
yeah.
really it is truly a deep cut. Sometimes our cuts are not that deep. That one's a great that one's a really
Yeah,
deep cut.
it has a female protagonist. You know, basically the entire world has this is a post-apocalyptic world. You know, that's basically fantasy, but like the whole world has been kind of destroyed by not only war but also by disease and poison, you know.
Ooh.
Like everything is, you know, it's like they live in this small little valley that's protected because of the wind, but most of the world is just covered in poisonous jungle.
Yikes.
And so it's not only, you know, like I in some ways it kind of reminded me of the portrayal of how they had Ray in The Force Awakens is kind of this
Mm, mhm.
the you know, a scavenger,
Mhm.
who then has to kind of rise up to stop two warring factions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend it wholeheartedly.
Excellent. Um, I'm gonna recommend a real world experience and say that this whole movie made me want to do a paint by number. Like when I was, because they're always
Oh
unicorns,
yeah.
they're always like two unicorns dappled with light, scampering in a field. Which, by the way, the unicorns in this movie were both boys, I think, and the sound of them scampering was whale sound.
Yeah, I've seen better. Yeah, in my ultimate top tier list of unicorns depicted in cinema, these would not be in the top five.
Yeah. But get a paint by number and just like get into that zen place where you're just like living in that moment, dappling the sunlight on your own personal unicorn. And like have that stress relieving moment because you need it after you watch Legend. All right. So, Mr. Blackwell, again, we barely scratched the surface of
Yeah,
all that is Legend. Where can people find you and watch your movies?
well, you can stay up to date with with my very rarely updated website on Squishy Studios. We're gonna have a lot more information as we finish up we're basically finishing up the feature film that I've been working on through the pandemic, the last movie ever made, and we're submitting it to film festivals now.
Yay!
So those film festivals should be, if we get into them in the spring, and then after that, throughout the year.
Cool.
So information on that will be on Squishy Studios. But if you really want to follow that project specifically, we're on Instagram and we're on Facebook, and that's where we're going to be posting, images and video and news on where it's playing.
Cool. Can't wait for that. So definitely check that out. And you can find me at the Neighborhood Comedy Theater in downtown Mesa, Arizona, or online at Most Excellent Chrissy. You can follow the pod on Instagram at Most Excellent Pod. There's a Facebook group, Most Excellent Pod, as well. And hey, if you feel like moved to complete the quest, like, rate, review, thumbs up, star, or even become a member at True Story FM, which is where you will get bonus content for every episode. You get every episode a week early. And I will personally send you mail in the US mail with like stickers and keychains and swag and like all sorts of fun stuff. So become a member at True Story FM. And in addition to all that, remember when you're out there in the world chasing unicorns and diving for rings, please keep the Most Excellent podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party
Party
on,
on, dudes.
dudes.